welcome to my talk about the REST API, WordPress's REST API. It's a sort of introductory talk. I think I have to move away the Zoom window. If you've seen on the right-hand side the black box that was Zoom, it should be gone now. It is a sort of introductory talk to show you what we can do with the REST API out of the box and how we could extend it, but actually that's extra content. So let's see how far we get in the next 40 minutes. And please also, if I'm talking too fast, tell me, then I will try to slow down. It's in part the nervousness and in part the fear that I won't get through with the 40 minutes to actually also show you some little live demo of what we can do with the API. So first of all, a little bit about me. My backgrounds are in computer science, IT security, and science and technology studies. And currently I'm working at the Angewandte, which is the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. And I'm working as a backend developer, where we mostly use Django and Flask, so Python, so no PHP, no WordPress. And I'm also a lecturer for web-based game development, where we work with JavaScript and Phase.io, so also no WordPress, no PHP. But I have some side projects as Tante Malkah, where I do trainings, workshops, consulting, and some smaller web dev projects, and those are mostly WordPress based. And I started to use WordPress sometime around 2006, just as a user, and there we were, the Twix branch took off, and around 2010, I actually started to host WordPresses, where the 3x branch took off. And then only in 2014, I actually started to tinker with WordPress, write some small plugins and stuff. And that was when the 4x branch started. So I mostly worked on those things in side projects. So I didn't have full-time exposure. So yeah, I have moderate expertise regarding WordPress and the REST API. But for example, last year, I did a plugin where I created my own REST endpoints because it was more convenient than to do it with the general API. So before we go into the talk, I now would also like to know a little bit about you. Maybe I can tailor the talk a little bit to where you are coding and RESTful wise. So if you want to give me 2 answers to 2 questions, please go to Slido, slido or slido.com and enter this number. Then you will find a presentation or a poll, which I'm starting right now. And the first question would be about your coding background. Basically, sort of how much coding you do or did, or how familiar you are with coding. And I'll give you a few minutes and we'll see how the distribution is. Okay, so far we have a lot of full-fledged web developers and some who try to leave coding to others. And a bit in between. So that's 16 people of 25, but I think I get a rough picture. We all can get a rough picture. The talk is certainly tailored towards people who are coding, but you don't have to be a full-time coder. So I'll move to the next question, which is now about your relationship to REST. So after a long workday, do you like to take a good rest, but that's about it? What do you know about REST and the REST API? Or have you had already some experiences with REST in general and RESTfulness? Or did you even already create your own REST API from scratch? So a lot of people already accessed REST APIs, so are familiar with the principle, how to use it. I hope I still have some new insight for you regarding WordPress or the WordPress REST API. Yeah, and we have 6% of 16, like 1 or 2 people who despise everything that is not completely and truly RESTful. So is it 1 person? 16, yeah, probably 1 person. So please, this person at the end of the talk, provide your expertise, because I really like to talk about what is truly RESTful. So yes, so we have a good distribution on what you know about REST. So I'll stop the poll again. Thanks for your answers. And yeah, as said, I hope there's something new for everyone. And yeah, if I'm too fast, especially if you're not that familiar with the concept, please tell me so I can slow down a bit. So about the talk. First, I would like to give you a very short intro to REST. This is mostly because I think it is important that to understand that REST is not just pushing around JSON data through with HTTP methods. And that is often how it is understood, but there's more to it, and there's a very important point which we will get into later. But then I will tell you about what you can do with the WordPress REST API out of the box with an example where we will be getting an overview of recent posts on a blog. Then we'll talk about discovery. So how we can actually discover what the REST API of a specific WordPress provides, what we can do with it. And about authentication, because maybe we don't just want to retrieve posts or pages, but also want to manipulate them and create some. And then I have some live demo examples how to add and delete an article. I have some reading resources for you if you want to dig deeper into the topic. And then, of course, we can have a Q&A and discussion. And I have some extra content, which is at the end of the slides, but I'm not sure if we will have time for that. But we can see how time and motivation is in the end. So first of all, a very short intro to REST. The theory comes from Roy Fielding and Roy Fielding's dissertation in 2000 about the representation state transfer. And the important thing is that REST is not a standard, but an architectural style, which is made, or the core of REST are 6 constraints about how a software system should work. First of all, it's a client-server architecture, and it has to be stateless. So that's quite familiar to web developers because HTTP is stateless and we have a client-server architecture. And it should have cacheability. So it should be able to tell if a resource that is accessed can be cached and for how long. And it should be a layered system. A layered system just means that if I access the API, I don't know if I'm actually talking with the system which is responsible in the end for storing data. There could be many proxies in between. And that's important for scalability. And then there's an optional constraint, code on demand, which just means that the server should be able to provide code to the client to extend functionality. But this doesn't have to be the case. And the most important constraint, I think, is the uniform interface, which itself has 4 important points. First of all, it's resource-based. Everything we access is seen as a resource. If, for example, a post, a page, a taxonomy, users, everything can be accessed as a resource and identified as a resource. And we already have a concept like uniform resource locators or uniform resource identifiers, URIs. So our HTTP system is already, and the HTML system is already quite fit for the REST interface, but it could be something else. And the resource manipulation happens through representations. So I can access a resource through an URL. We call it an endpoint. And for example, get the representation of the resource, or also send the representation of the resource to manipulate it. And these representations are usually the JSON data, but it doesn't have to be JSON. And now the most important thing, for me, I guess, is that the messages that the API uses are self-descriptive. So all the actions you have should be self-descriptive through the API itself. And we will see how that looks like. And I think this is one of the most important things for a truly RESTful API, because then I only need the initial endpoint to actually learn what I can do with the API. In theory, I wouldn't even need documentation. Then the last thing, hypermedia as the engine of application state, just means that every resource also has links to connected resources and to actions I can use with those resources, or things I can do with the resources. In practice, this looks something like that. We have a database storage somewhere where the actual data is stored, and a web server with some business logic as usual. And the REST API is in front of the business logic and provides those endpoints. So these are just the URIs. Maybe I can increase the size here a bit. Like resource A could be /posts or /pages, maybe with an ID. And then on the other hand, we have clients, all sorts of clients, like desktop, mobile, point of sale, single servers, server centers, server farms, whatever. And the thing is, they communicate with methods, in our case, the HTTP methods, and use representations to manipulate the resources on the server or to retrieve them. And the representations are the payloads and the responses in HTTP. And usually, or most commonly, I think it's JSON, but it could be XML or any other structured data set. And that's probably where the assumption comes from, that REST means pushing around JSON data with those methods. But that's just one version of how REST could work. But it's the usual version for us web developers. So that's about REST. So let's look into what the WordPress REST API can do, what it can do out of the box. So you set up a fresh WordPress, and basically you can do everything with the REST API that you also could do with the WordPress admin. Of course, only if you have proper authentication, and we have some more on that later. If you are unauthorized, you still can, as a visitor, retrieve posts, pages, user info, taxonomies, basically everything that can be displayed by a visitor on the site as well. What do you need for that? In order to do that, you need just the base URI of the API, or actually you just need the URI of the block, the URL of the block, that's it. And probably a RESTful personality, because you will be using the API itself to learn about what the API can do. And that's only possible because of the self-descriptive messages. Or, of course, you could look into the wonderful REST API handbook for WordPress, which is very concise, I think, and not that long. And you can quickly get into how to use the REST API. So I think it's a good reference. So first, a teaser example, how we can fetch a post. I didn't read a lot. Let's say I didn't read a lot about REST API, but I know on a certain blog, I just use this endpoint, this URI, to retrieve posts. And I do just a simple GET request on the post by calling this URI. And here I use a very old blog of mine, because nothing changes there. So if you watch this in 5 years, probably you still can recreate the same thing, because it won't change. That is, of course, if noblogs.org is still alive. So you can do this GET request in a browser, just click on the link with an API client or on the CLI, wherever you want to do that, and whatever you want to do with that. And then we can look at the data. So let's just see how it actually looks like. I just clicked in the browser on this URL, and Firefox already renders me the content, and I get back an array with a lot of articles. If I collapse everything, I see I got 10 posts, which are the most 10 recent posts. But we will look into that later. The thing is, when I look at the data, I can see there are certain things which are in every item, which is, for example, a date, a link, a title in a rendered version, for example. And let's say I want to do something with that. What can I do now? I can create a simple HTML file with an input field where the user can enter a blog URL and a submit button. And when the user clicks on submit, I craft the URL to the post endpoints because I know how it should look like. And then I do a simple fetch with JavaScript, with the browser API, just fetch this resource. With the result, I cycle through and grab the article date, the article link, and the article title rendered. And with those items, I generate list items, like HTML list items, and add them to the page. And voila, we have this little example here without knowing a lot about the REST API. And now I can input just this blog address. Now the moment of truth, click on submit. Something should happen in the background. Or did I do something wrong? It's fetching. Well, that is a pity. I'll just try it with maybe, now it just took very long. So the fetch in the background took a while, but now it has rendered it. And I have the date, the title, and the link. So I could click on this and I get to the actual blog. But what this is really a very simple HTML file, 45 long, 54 lines long, no styling, of course. You see, it's not very pretty. And a little bit of JavaScript, and that's it, no libraries. And with that, I could create an overview of recent blog posts on any blog that allows me to access the REST API. So that was an example, what I already can do out of the box without knowing a lot. But now we would want to do more with the REST API. So let's talk about discovery. What can we do more? And here in the slides, I also have the links to the chapters in the REST API handbook. There you can get some more detailed info. But the important thing is, first of all, you only need the URL of a blog. And you can do a head request on the blog front page. And you should get back in the response headers either one of those two lines, which is the here example.com, the blog URL. And then you have either WP JSON or REST route as a query parameter. And this depends on whether you have pretty links enabled. If you have pretty links enabled, then it will look like this. But this is the root URI of the REST API for this specific blog. So if you create a client, you always should do, when you initialize the client, you should do a head request first. So you make sure you know the root API, and all endpoints of the API then are below this root API endpoint or URI. If you can't access the response headers, if you're in an older browser or have a library to do the GET request or the head request where you can't access the headers, you can also always do just a simple GET request on the blog itself, on the front page. And then you also have in the head element, you have a link element, which provides the same URL. So it's the same, it's just more expensive in terms of getting a lot more data and extracting this. So now we have the root URI, and we can just do a simple GET request to that. Let's take a look. And I increase the size here a bit. And that's what I get back as from the root endpoint of the REST API of this blog. So I have a name of the blog, a description, the URL, and then I have namespaces, authentication, and routes. That's the most interesting things. The authentication, we'll talk about it later, just tells me which means there are to make authenticated REST requests to the API, and the routes tell me what can I actually do, what endpoints are there. And here we see, and this correlates also with the namespaces, where we have, for example, BuddyPress. We can see that on this block, BuddyPress, the BuddyPress plugin is installed, which provides its own endpoints. But the main WordPress core endpoints are on WP v2. And here you can see that there's something for posts, for pages, media blocks, templates, taxonomies, and so on. So that's the idea. Ideally, you can do anything you could also do with the WordPress admin, just with the REST API. I'll jump over this line. If you're working on a command line, you just want to get a nice overview of the routes that are available. You can use a filter like JQ, but actually, for example, opening it in Firefox is just nice because it already provides collapsed views, and you can see all the things there are here. Or, of course, you could use the sometimes user-friendly endpoint reference in the REST API handbook, but I don't really use that very often because it doesn't tell me anything more than there is already in the API itself. Actually, there's even less than in the API itself sometimes, but sometimes it might also help to look into that. So now about authentication. As I've said, authentication is also discoverable in this authentication endpoint, in this authentication property we have here. So not the routes, but the authentication. And in this case, it tells me that application passwords is available. And it also gives me a link to where this authentication is configurable. So that would be in the WordPress admin interface itself. And by default, only cookie auth is available. And since WordPress 5.6, also application passwords. But there are other authentication methods for which you have plugins. If you want to use OAuth 1 or JSON Web Tokens, there are plugins for that. And also, if you have a WordPress that is older than 5.6, then you could use the application password plugin, which just provides the same thing here. One note on local development. Application passwords are by default only available if the connection is TLS secured, which is of course a bit tedious if you're developing locally only on HTTP. But the only thing to activate it nevertheless is to add this filter. And of course, there's a plugin that just does exactly that, add this filter. And that's a good way to work with the application password in your local dev setting. But please don't use that anywhere else than in a local dev environment or wherever you are really sure that nobody can access the communication, because you send your application passwords, the tokens, over that connection. So how can you actually use it? You have to go to your user profile and create an application password. And I'll show you in a minute in the live example. And the password then is, you have to encode it together with a username in the form username, colon, and then the password. And you have to base 64 encode it. And that will be the token that you can use in the authorization header. I'm doing this here on the Linux command line, but there are also base64 encoder web pages out there, or you're doing JavaScript. And then when you add this token in the authorization header in the form basic space and then token, then you can actually make authenticated requests and post posts, for example. So finally, we are authenticated. We can actually rule the WordPress. So let's check out some examples. I also have a short look at the chat. No questions so far. I assume they will come, but now let's take a look how to actually post something. So as a reference, I have, I'll create a new tab here, and I have a local WordPress test instance running. It's a fresh WordPress, the usual thing, hello world, and I will use that for the example now. So what I do is I open up my API client and I create a new GET request. Or no, the first thing we said, we just do a head request. So because we want to know where is the API endpoint. And we do a request, in this case on HTTP localhost. And make this a bit bigger. I hope you can see that. Otherwise, let me know to increase font size. And I don't get back any body because it's a head request, but in the headers, I get some information. For example, this link I told you about, and here we see pretty links are enabled. So I actually now got the root endpoint for the REST API. So let's use that to get the root endpoint. So we see this is the local test site, and authentication already provides application passwords because I've used this plugin so that application passwords are enabled, although it's on an insecure connection. And we have a lot of routes. So you see here, it's a bit tedious if I want to click through all the extra routes that there are, but you see also in the namespaces that there are only these three things. So no body press, like in the other example with the block before. That's the things that are there out of the box in a fresh WordPress setup. And now I would like to, let's get the post first, the thing we already did. So we know how to do that already, but maybe let's first still look into the root and see how the post works. I've seen in the Firefox before that the route is /wp-v2 posts. It's called routes. Sorry. So now I just have, from this root endpoint, I just filtered out this one endpoint because I want to know how the post's endpoint runs, or the post's route. And here it tells me there are two methods actually, get and post. So on this route, WP-v2 post, I could do either a get request or I could do a post request. And there are also two endpoints. See, there are two of those. And the first is the get endpoint with some arguments, and the other is the post endpoint. And the arguments actually describe the parameters I can use. It's really the same description you find in the handbook. So this is all there, and it also tells you if it's required or not. And for example, I didn't find the info in the handbook or in the endpoint reference if the parameter is required or not. I only found it here. But yeah, let's first start just do no, we want to do a get on posts just to see what is there. And we've seen now that the endpoint is WP-v2 posts. And I just do a simple get request. And I'll get exactly one post because there is only this one post published in a fresh setup. It's the obligatory hello world post. So I have all the details about this hello world post. But now, what if I want to actually post a post? Then I would have to do the post request on the post's endpoint. Maybe I should have done it with pages. Then I wouldn't have to say posts. And I'm already mistyping. So I would do a post request on the post's endpoint. Let's just try it out. We are not authenticated yet. And WordPress already tells me, okay, sorry, you are not allowed to do that, to create posts, because you actually have to be a user that is allowed to create posts. And that's now where the authentication header comes in. So I need an application password. What can I do? I can go to, I need an account, of course, and I can go to the WordPress admin, and on my profile, at the end, I have the section application passwords. And here you see I already set up a password before, but I don't know the password exactly anymore, so I can just revoke it. And let's create a new application password. Let's call it live demo, not lice. We don't want to get lice, but a live demo key. So add the new application password. And now it tells me, okay, and basically this is just the label for the application password, so that I later know which passwords I created for which applications. Maybe there are different ones. And this is the password. The next time I visit the page, the password will be gone. So I have to store that somewhere secretly. And as said, we need to transform it. We have to generate the token, which is a base 64 encoding of the username and the password. So I'll do that quickly here. I just write my username, a colon, and the password that I got, and I feed it into a base 64 encoder. And this is the token. So now I have the token that I can actually use as application password. So let's head back to the API. Here was not allowed. Now let's add the authorization header. With basic and then the token. And let's just try it again. Okay, it didn't work, but the request now was not a not allowed request, but a bad request. So I'm already allowed to do that, but it tells me, okay, content, title, and excerpt are empty. Well, that's a problem because here it told me that in the root endpoint, it told me for the post, there are different parameters. Let's say, for example, the status, because either the post might be published or draft, and the title, for example. And with the title, it tells me it's not required. And content is, I think, also not required. But it's probably a special case, because the point is you only need one of them. If you provide the content, you don't need the title. If you provide a title, you don't need the content, or vice versa. I'm not totally sure, but let's just try to add a title now to our post. So this is where we have to get the representation in. So I just say I have a title of la-di-da, and let's try to post it again. And it worked. Now I have a post with the ID 13 and the title la-di-da, and nothing much more in it. And the status is also draft. So that's also why at the page itself, I don't see the post, because it's a draft and not published yet. So what can I do? Maybe I want to add some content. And maybe let's just publish it. So let's set the status to publish. And we don't need the title. The title is already there, so I remove that. I just provide the info that should change. Oh, no, that wouldn't work, because, yeah, I'm sorry. Let's go back and do that and say that's a new article, la-di-da 2. Because now I'm posting in a post endpoint, and a new post will be generated. In this case, it won't be generated because I misspelled the status parameter. It also, the REST API tells me about that. It says invalid parameter status. What did I write? I did write published, and it should be publish. So let's change that. Okay, I've created a new post with the ID 14, but already created a post before. So now I have this one, but this is published. So let's take a look at the website. Here's ladida2. But the thing I actually wanted to do is to only post this ladida article, and the thing with the draft before was a mistake. So let's see what I have here. When I do the get again, now I get returned 2 results. Why 2? Because the GET request is not authenticated, and I only get back the published articles. So ladida2, which we just have published, posted and published, and the other is the hello world article. But what about the draft? Well, the draft is also here, and there's a filter for that. A query parameter called status, and I could use that. The point is I cannot use that when I'm a visitor, because as a visitor, I cannot, it tells me it's forbidden. I cannot see the draft articles. So I just have to use the same authentication header that I have here, the authorization header, sorry. And then I could do that. Now I get back a list of exactly 1 post, because there's only 1 with a status draft. But so that's how I can also filter my posts in when I retrieve them. And let's say now, okay, we've posted this new article 14, and that should actually have the title ladida. What we can do is let's duplicate this and just work on this single post. So I have to provide the ID, which I got after I posted the article. And now I say, okay, I want to change the title. I don't want to change the content, so I don't need that. So let's do that. Now I'm doing a post, still a post request, but on a specific article. And now the title changed to ladida. And we see it here. Well, the slug didn't change. I could try to change that as well. But now let's get rid of the other article, the 13, the draft we posted before. Well, we don't want to post anything here anymore. We know the article 13 is a draft, but we want to get rid of it, okay? So let's do a delete request. And we want to delete the 13 article. And when deleting, I don't need anybody because I just want to delete exactly this post with the ID 13. And it will tell me, okay, this is how the article looks like. It says, okay, I've deleted it. But here in the status, we see what actually happened. It was moved to trash. So the article is still there, not completely deleted, but it got the status trash. So what can I do with that? I could also use the status filter trash to see what is in my trash when I do the get. And I see this is this article. So if I want to actually delete it, I need another query parameter. I think it's called force. Let's try that. Yes, now it gives me back the same representation, but inside the previous property, and it says deleted true. So now the article with the ID 13 is actually really gone. So if I do the get again with the trash filter, I get back an empty list. So yes, we have created posts, we've changed posts, we've deleted posts, and that is basically what I wanted to show you. Let's get back to the slide. Before I give you some reading resources, but I'll jump over the slide. You can, as said, I posted a link to the slides. You can get back here. I have some resources which are, in my experience, quite good and nice introductory resources if you want to get into REST in general. And then the Wordpress REST API and 2 articles are actually a complete guide to the REST API basics, which is very nice to get into the thing. And the other thing for the nostalgic is more this article on how the REST API is the future of WordPress. It's an article from 2017, but as in the talk announcement, I also talked about it, about the question whether it is the future of WordPress. I think the question is nostalgic. I think without the REST API, we won't be going anywhere. But that said, I hope it was not too fast and too much in one go. But yeah, please let me know what was unclear, where would you like to know more, or also what are your own experiences with the WordPress REST API, especially one person who despises everything that is not truly RESTful. And do you have any other comments? And here I've posted my email.